Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first Steadman Series lecture. I'm Chris Impastato, Fine Arts Librarian and manager of the Steadman Architectural Library. We're so pleased that you could join us this evening virtually. Now I would like to introduce tonight's speaker, John Gunther. John C. Gunther, FAIA Lead AP, has produced a distinguished body of architecture that contributes significantly to the built environment, with projects ranging from the adaptive reuse of historic landmarks to new projects that fit comfortably into their physical, environmental, social, and historic context. His work has received over 50 national, regional, and local awards from the American Institute of Architects and a diverse array of professional organizations, civic groups, and publications. John serves as the president of the Society of Architectural Historians, St. Louis and Missouri Valley chapters. As an architect, John seeks to contribute through his designs an architecture which serves and ennobles our lives, works with the environment, and enhances our world. As a historian, he recognizes that we stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before us. Welcome, John, and thanks for being with us this evening.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you for your kind introduction and welcome everyone. It's indeed an honor to present to you tonight the Wainwright Tomb, Lewis Henry Sullivan's eternal masterpiece. This is our inaugural talk for the Steadman series. And the Steadman series is an idea that was created by Chris to draw upon the holdings of the Steadman Library and use those as the basis of this and future talks. As the Steadman Library has the Sullivan drawings for the Wainwright, we will be focusing on those tonight. Coming up in the near future is a talk by Eric Mumford on Le Corbusier's American influence, Breuer, Pei, and Sert. This will be on November 18th, 2021. Eric Mumford is the Rebecca and John Voyles Professor of Architecture at the Sam Fox School of Design and Visual Arts. Following, there will be a talk on Venice and Vitruvius on February 8th, 2022 by Dr. Margaret Devlin. She is the William Martin and Nina Merrill Prindle Professor of Fine Arts, Art History, Principia College. This has all been made possible by George Fox Steadman, who was an inventor and businessman and president of the Curtis Manufacturing Company. He attended the manual training school at Washington University in St. Louis and graduated magna cum laude from Harvard in 1892. It is through his generous gift and his wife's that in 1926, they established the Doubling Scholarship in Architecture at Washington University in memory of his late brother. Following that, in 1928, they endowed the George Fox Steadman Architectural Collection and donated the funds for a very special room to be designed and built to house their original gift of 600 volumes on architecture and allied arts. This room opened in 1930 to the design of Oscar Mulgard, architect of Moran Russell and Crowell. This library holds an amazing collection of works, including Piranesi's works, Vitruvius, and early publications of Frank Lloyd Wright, to name but a few. Mr. Steadman envisioned this room as a place for visitors to, quote, search the shelves for records of work and good design and so find here inspiration for great achievement. It should also be noted, as we are talking about the Wainwright Tomb tonight at Bellefontaine Cemetery and Arboretum, that they are both interred at Bellefontaine Cemetery and Arboretum. This is a view of the Steadman room and the Steadman collection. It is a beautiful room and one that we hope you will have a chance to visit very soon. Also within the St. Louis Public Library, on display right now is an exhibit entitled Great City, Great Architecture, the Steadman Library and St. Louis. And this exhibit features, among other many notable holdings of the Steadman, as well as this life-size replica of the Wainwright Tomb at Bellefontaine Cemetery. This exhibit will run through January 8th of 2022. So we would encourage you to come visit. And as I said, it's set within the beautiful Great Hall of the St. Louis Public Library, designed by Cass Gilbert. Here are a few shots of the exhibit of the Wainwright Tomb itself, so you can get a sense of the size and scale of this magnificent tomb. This is also showing some of the collections of the Stedman in these beautiful wooden cases. The St. Louis Public Library Central Branch was designed by Cass Gilbert in 1907 and renovated in 2012 by Canon Design of St. Louis. It certainly is the crown jewel of the St. Louis Public Library system and made possible by a major donation from Andrew Carnegie. Cass Gilbert was our architect for this building. Other notable works of Cass Gilbert: the Minnesota State Capitol, 1895 to 1905, the St. Louis Art Museum, 1904, the Woolworth Building to 1912, the 1902 to 1912, and the United States Supreme Court Building, 1928 to 35. This is a beautiful Beaux-Arts style building referencing Italian Renaissance palazzo. And now on to Lewis Henry Sullivan, FAIA. We are very fortunate here in St. Louis to have the Wainwright Building, one of the great contributions to American architecture, along with the Wainwright Tomb and the Union Trust Building and the St. Nicholas Hotel, which unfortunately was demolished in 1974. But these are four wonderful works of architecture done at the height of his creative career. Sullivan was born September 3rd, 1856 in Boston, Massachusetts, and died April 14th, 1924 in Chicago, Illinois. He attended the Massachusetts Institute of Technology for 1 year in 1872. Following that, he worked for Frank Furness of Philadelphia to gain some additional practical experience, and then William LeBaron Jenney of Chicago in 1873. He then traveled to the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris to obtain further education. Upon returning to Chicago, he worked as a freelance designer and then was employed by Dankmar Adler in 1879. He then, after a few years, was made partner of Dankmar Adler and Company, 1881 to 83, and then principal in Adler and Sullivan, 1883 to 1895. Upon the dissolution of that firm, he continued to practice between 1895 and 1922 as Lewis H. Sullivan. Posthumously, he received the AIA Gold Medal in 1944, which is the highest honor possible and granted by the AIA, American Institute of Architects. He's regarded as the spiritual father of modern American architecture and created that first true expression of the early skyscraper design with the Wainwright Building. And of course, his famous quote, "Form ever follows function," is well known. This is a timeline of Lewis Henry Sullivan's life placed in context with other noted architects in that period. And as you note, he follows Henry Hobson Richardson, H.H. Richardson, at the top there between 1838 and 1886. And he was followed by Frank Lloyd Wright, 1867 to 1959. And then Harvey Ellis preceded him as well, 1852 to 1904. So this gives you a sense of the great architects of that time period, their lifespans, and their practices. I've mapped out here the life of Lewis Henry Sullivan, beginning with his birth in 1856 in Boston, concluding with his death in Chicago in 1924, and posthumously when he received the AIA Gold Medal in 1944. In blue, you note various historic events such as the American Civil War, the Great Fire of Chicago, 1871, which opened up a lot of opportunities for architects to rebuild that great city, and then the financial panic of 1893 and World War I, 1914 to 18. Highlighted in purple are the various practices that he worked in, as well as his education. In red, you see a variety of noted projects, And in the golden color, we highlight the buildings here in St. Louis, the Wainwright, the Union Trust, the Wainwright Tomb, and St. Nicholas Hotel. Also for context, we show here a variety of his noted buildings, beginning with the Auditorium Building in Chicago, 1886 to 89, a tremendous multi-purpose building, which really is a great tribute to him and the firm and still stands today. The Martin Ryerson Tomb of 1887, along with the Getty Tomb of 1890. Those led and influenced the Wainwright Tomb of 1892. Also, you can see here highlighted the Wainwright Building, St. Louis, 1890 to 91, and the Union Trust Building of 1892 to 93, followed by the St. Nicholas Hotel, 1893 to 94. So you can see the wide range of architectural projects that Louis Sullivan created and designed. And along with later in life, the Prudential Building, a beautiful high rise in Buffalo, New York, and a series of bank buildings that he did throughout the Midwest as well. One cannot begin to talk about the Wainwright Tomb until one has an appreciation for the Wainwright Building itself. And here we see that downtown St. Louis in this aerial map, 3 of his 4 projects were within 4 blocks of each other. Beginning with the Wainwright Building, 90 to 91, here at 111 North 7th Street in red. This was a project that Sullivan designed for Ellis Wainwright, who was president of Wainwright Brewing Company, and who formed the St. Louis Brewing Association, as well as being the president of the National Brewers Association. Wainwright was also a commercial and civic leader and part of the directorship of the Mercantile Exchange, as well as being a board member of the St. Louis Public Library and the School of Fine Arts at Washington University. This building is noteworthy because of its very great expression of tallness, its verticality. And Frank Lloyd Wright, who was in the office at the time, noted that he became, quote, aware of its nature, its real sense, it was tall. It was the first design to clearly express the quality of tallness in this new steel frame skyscraper period in American architecture. Interesting to note, the building actually had much more humble beginnings. It was more of a speculative real estate project originally undertaken by Charles Ramsey of St. Louis, seen in the sketch to the upper left from a newspaper article. This preliminary scheme is simply a 9-story square Romanesque speculative office building, and it was commissioned by Ellis Wainwright's mother, Catherine. And it was to have about 225 offices around a central light court. Ellis Wainwright then engaged Adler and Sullivan in November of 1890 to create what you see to the right, this magnificent expression of the new modern vertical office building. If one takes a look at the various offices contained within, you'll note that it was the Home Brewing Association on the 7th floor, various real estate and investment firms, street railways, railroad offices, insurance companies, architects, and engineers. And in fact, Gale E. Henderson, a very prominent St. Louis architect, also had his offices there on the 7th floor. It was truly a convergence and an expression of the expansive world of brewing, real estate, and finance. Really, it was all of the various business interests that Ellis Wainwright had all contained under one roof. As we noted, that Sullivan, his great quote, "Form ever follows function," is well known to everyone. And truly, this building is such an expression. They were seeking to rise up high, even though it's only 10 stories in height. It makes use of new technologies of the steel frame and the use of elevators to increase the return on investment. Here you see the building under construction with its steel frame rising up above from its masonry cladding below. Of particular interest, you would note that the steel columns actually are behind every other brick pier. So in other words, Sullivan, in order to increase the expression of verticality and height, added an additional brick pier between each structural steel column. Also note the beautiful cornice is being cantilevered out in the steel framing. And here you see the building today, and it is to be noted that it has a very classical expression as well as verticality. It is a classical composition of a base, a middle, and a top, as you can see clearly in this composition and photograph. It was also featured in entry as one of 10 buildings that changed America. Here one can really appreciate that vertical sense of the building by the simple unadorned masonry piers rising up uninterrupted, and the terracotta spandrels being recessed behind the face of those brick piers. Another view of the east facade of the Wainwright building. And it's important to note here of Sullivan's own assessment. And he said, quote, "Buildings should possess an individuality as marked as that which exists among men, making them distinctly separable from each other." This was from Ornament in Architecture from Engineering Magazine of 1892. He went on to say, "A certain kind of ornament should appear on a certain kind of structure, just as a certain kind of leaf should appear on a certain kind of tree." This from Ornament in Architecture as well. And in fact, he was well versed and studied and had a copy of Asa Gray's School and Field Book of Botany from 1857. In fact, Asa Gray was well known in this area as well as Henry Shaw, who founded the Botanical Museum and Library Gardens in 1859, sought out Asa Gray's opinions and ideas for the garden. Asa Gray, 1810 to 1888, was a longtime professor of botany at Harvard University and regarded as the 19th century's most important American botanist. And in fact, when Henry Shaw created this museum and library here at the Missouri Botanical Gardens, on the ceiling in the southern room of this first floor, he has Asa Gray's portrait painted on that ceiling. Another view of the east facade of the Wainwright building. And one might say, where did it come from for this building? As hops are a prized ingredient in the brewing process, hops were featured on the Wainwright building's facade, and they symbolized the quality of St. Louis beer, Wainwright's leadership role in the brewing industry, and they represented the source of Wainwright's wealth. And this is from research in a wonderful article written by Paula Lupkin, "The Wainwright Building, Monument of St. Louis's Lager Landscape." And I would encourage everyone to read that. And in that, she notes that the hops come from the Cannabici family, the common hop, Humulus lupulus, and hemp, cannabis. And if you want proof, here is a cannabis panel at the fourth floor spandrel of the hemp plant ornamentalized and decorating that spandrel. Above, it's beautifully capped off by this very powerful cornice and the top floor with its circular windows. And here you can see the vines twining about the circular windows, all based upon the hop family. And another drawing of the common hop off to the left, and this again is from Paula Lupkin's article. And here you can see how the inspiration of the hop led to the ornamentation of the Wainwright building. So the Wainwright building truly is, in a very beautiful but in subtle way, celebrating the brewing industry and the use of hops through this magnificent ornamentation in terracotta by Louis Sullivan. If one looks at the entrance, the entry portal on grade level on the south side of the building, you can see the twining vine and hop flower here. And that is also illustrated in the upper left-hand diagram and drawing. But take note of the vertical the twining hop that's wrapping around that vertical element at the front door. Now, while the building itself is been celebrated as this individual high-rise building, it was part of three magnificent buildings, the Booter, Title Guarantee, and Wainwright together, and viewed by architectural historian Vincent Scully as one of the most magnificent trios of urban design and architectural design working in harmony. Sadly, two of the three were demolished later on to make way for the Gateway Mall. Here's an earlier photograph, a postcard showing the Wainwright building at its 10 stories in height, and then the Missouri Trust building, which he designed further to the north, just a couple of blocks. And in 1968, the building was designated a National Historic Landmark, and in 1972 named a city landmark. It should also be noted and much celebrated that in 1974, there was a competition that was held to design a new state office complex to convert the Wainwright building into the state office complex. And this was won by Mitchell Jurgala Architects of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, along with Hastings and Chivetta of St. Louis. And here is the design sketch for the winning entry. And you can see the design is a low-story building, multiple L shapes that hold the corners of the site, are very deferential to the Wainwright, but very much at peace with the original. These are photographs of the competition entry architectural model, explaining the three-dimensional qualities of that building. And here, the new 1981 Wainwright State Office building as completed. It's a series of very, very beautiful courtyards, and all set in such a way as to set off this beautiful original Wainwright building. And in these photographs, you can see, again, various views from at grade around the building, and you can see how the Wainwright building, highlighted in red, is embraced by this new low-story, three-story addition, wrapping around and holding the corners of that block. The interior was, the atrium was actually enclosed with a skylight, and it's interesting to note that Ellis Wainwright himself had hoped for just such an intervention and have an interior atrium for additional trading space within that building. So that dream came true many, many years later. And here you see a beautiful stained glass ley light above the entry hall. And as you see it today, with its internal courtyards as well. Now we turn to the Wainwright Tomb of 1892. It should be noted that this Wainwright Tomb follows the Ryerson Tomb and the Getty Tomb, both in Graceland Cemetery in Chicago. And you can see elements of each of those tombs make their way into the Wainwright Tomb itself here in Bellefontaine Cemetery of 1892. In that there's a very, very powerful forms, geometrical forms, expression expressed in the materials and form, as you see in the Ryerson Tomb, along with the Getty Tomb in its cubic form, its simple masonry base, and then carved upper half of that wall, all set within with a beautiful arch leading into the tomb itself. Here is a more of a close-up view of the Ryerson Tomb, and you can see that it's inspired by Egyptian revival based upon the pyramid and the mastaba. So the pyramid roof caps off the sloping walls of the mastaba. And note also this beautiful material. It's carved out of highly polished Quincy granite. And so that material is actually highly reflective when you catch it at the right angle here, as shown by this beautiful photograph. Here, the Getty Tomb of 1890, with its simple masonry cubic form, simple flat roof with scalloped roof profile, all set upon a solid base and then octagonal patterns that adorn the upper half of the walls, framing this magnificent entry arch into the tomb and bronze gates protecting the tomb itself. A view of that front entry approach and the side arched window. This then takes us to the Wainwright Tomb itself, designed for Charlotte Dixon Wainwright in 1892, located in Bellefontaine Cemetery in Arboretum, just to the north of St. Louis, about 5 miles from the Gateway Arch to the northwest. This is a very noteworthy cemetery in Arboretum in that it was part of the rural cemetery movement. And it in the design of these rural cemeteries, they were established as cities in park-like settings outside of the urban centers. This cemetery began in 1849 and was designed by Elmer Hotchkiss, who arrived in October of 1849 to design Bellefontaine. The association was formed in 1850. Bellefontaine is translated as beautiful fountain, given that there is a natural spring nearby. It totals 314 acres, has 14 miles of curved roadways, 9,000 trees, 500 varieties and cultivars. And it is an accredited level 2 arboretum. There are many, many hundreds of works of art here, and it is virtually an outdoor museum. And there are 87,000 plus internments here. Those of note here are William Clark of Lewis and Clark Expedition, James Eads of the Eads Bridge, Thomas Hart Benton, Adolphus Bush, the Wainwrights, the Lemp family, and William S. Burroughs. The Wainwright Tomb, designed in 1892, was created for Charlotte Dixon, the wife of Ellis Wainwright, who sadly died far too young of peritonitis at the age of 34 in 1891, shortly after the Wainwright building was completed. So Ellis called upon Sullivan to design this to wife and then himself. It really is a masterpiece of exquisite geometry. And it is also of note that the name Wainwright appears nowhere on the exterior of the tomb. So it's a quiet memorial to the family. It also is characterized by it's a very welcoming approach leading up to the entry doors. As you note, there's an elevated terrace with a pair of seats flanking the entrance. And it's almost as if the tomb itself is reaching out and embracing you as you come forward. It was designed entirely in and built in limestone. It should be noted that there was another design for another mausoleum, the Burns Mausoleum of 1889, which predates the Wainwright. This was designed by Harvey Ellis for Ekelin Mann for Mount Mora Cemetery in St. Joseph, Missouri. It was unrealized, but this design was published widely. And here you'll note it too has an elevated terrace with wing walls of stone that wrap around it as you approach the arched entry to the Burns tomb. One wonders if that might have been viewed by Sullivan's office in a publication. We don't know that, but it's an interesting thought to think about. So the Wainwright tomb, here you see upon its restoration actually, is a both and kind of design. It's both a monochromatic exterior of limestone and a polychromatic interior of marble and mosaic tile. It's both timeless with its forms and very modern in its interpretation and ornamentation. It's both elemental and ornate, and it's both symmetrical and asymmetrical, all within this beautiful cubic domed form. Here is a view leading into the tomb itself. So you can see in this one photograph that you can see the very monochromatic exterior in contrast with the polychromatic interior. Now, with the benefit of the drawings that are held by the Steadman Library, we will take a look at Sullivan's drawings and then pair them up with photographs and images that will help to explain the drawings. So this very first drawing is one of the plan for the concrete foundation, drawing 1 of February 20th, 1892. And you'll note there are initials G, GE, and WH. GE, George Grant Elmsley, was an amazing architect and member of the Sullivan firm who worked on this project. So I will enlarge these photographs of these drawings as we go through so that you have a chance to appreciate the craftsmanship, the dimensions, the composition. So again, this is the plan for the concrete foundation. The next drawing that you see is one for the floor plan itself. This is from February 20th of 1892 as well. And you'll see that it is a simple 20-foot by 20-foot building footprint for the tomb itself. And the terrace in front leading up is 8.5 feet wide or deep and 28 feet 4 inches wide as one approaches. Inside the tomb, you note that there was the placement for the 2 catacombs. And here you see the marble slabs for Ellis Wainwright on the left and Charlotte Dixon Wainwright on the right. There are beautiful carvings and poems engraved in these slabs. For Charlotte, the poem reads, "Say not good night, but in some brighter clime, bid me good morning." For Ellis Wainwright, his inscription reads, "Oh, for the touch of a vanished hand and the sound of a voice that is still." The next drawing is one of the section through the platform and the steps, and a plan of the stone course under the lower circular steps of the dome of the roof. So here's a close-up of that drawing with these 2 aspects of the building. And zooming in, you can see that on this, roof plan, that it is drained in the corners by 2 sets of a pair of scuppers, if you will. So where it appears to be a relatively flat roof in the corners, it slopes slightly in order to drain the rainwater off of the roof structure in each corner. This is a close-up of the drawing of the terrace leading up to the front door. And take note of how the stonework is interlocked. Every cubic inch of this building has been so thoughtfully designed and planned and realized. And one of the favorite features of this building in my mind is this beautiful stone bench that is set into the coursing, resulting in these beautiful patterns within the wall that surrounds. And note how the stone bench, the ledge curves out, just grows right out of the wall there. And here you can see the built result as well as the drawing from Sullivan's office. Our next drawing is one of the plan of the ceiling on the top half of the drawing and a plan of the dome if you were looking above from outside. This is zooming in on the ceiling plan of the tomb. And you'll note it's a very, very simple diagram, a square that then projects out on all 4 sides. And the center, the circle there, has a radius of 5'9", and this is a mosaic dome that hovers above the floor and the burial chambers. This drawing, also on that same piece of paper, is of the exterior roof, the dome itself, which has a 7'6" radius, and then has 3 stair steps in the limestone leading down to the square base. Of note here, the water from the dome drains into a channel that's been carved into the last stone stair step and then drains just on one side of the building to the southwest. Here's a view from the roof and level so you can appreciate the different methods of draining the roof. In the very center here, this scupper is what you see here on the last stair step of the limestone dome. And off to the left here in the corners are these pair of scuppers at each corner of the tomb. Another view of the dome itself, showing all the various conditions of the roof and the drainage patterns. And when you see this from this point of view, one reminds oneself that Sullivan, while at the École des Beaux-Arts, visited Rome, and you have to wonder if he had not visited the Pantheon, one of the great buildings of all time, and taken note of the base of the great dome of the Pantheon. And I think that's probably a safe bet that he did. And I think that the Wainwright Tomb has is something of an homage to that magnificent dome form. Now, here's a view of the elevation, the front elevation as one approaches the Wainwright Tomb. And this is the same drawing enlarged. That same photograph, that same elevation is seen here in this photograph as one approaches the tomb. And note on either side and around the top, there's these magnificent stone carvings that wrap around, and each facade is different from the next. So each is unique to its own facade. And this is a close-up of that same carved facade panel on the front elevation. And one can see the organic nature of this plant form. And again, Paula Lupkin refers to the idea that these are variations of the hop family, that again, this tomb is celebrating the source of the wealth of the family, that of the brewing industry and the use of hops. As I looked at that facade, I've always marveled at its proportion. And I had to think, is it at all related to the golden rectangle, which has been a proportional system that has been proven time and again to be a very beautiful proportional system and one found in ancient architecture. And here you see Notre Dame in Paris and the Parthenon. Well, the way the golden section works, or the golden rectangle, it's based upon the Fibonacci numbers, and that is adding successive numbers. 1 and 1 equals 2, 2 plus 1 equals 3, 3 plus 2 is 5, and 5 and 3 is 8, and so on and so forth. And when one takes the squares of those totals, you get this diagram of the progression of squares that you see in the lower middle. And then if you inscribe the radiuses of those squares, you get this pattern that is this beautiful spiral pattern, beautifully proportioned. And in fact, this spiral is found in nature, whether it's the size of a seashell or going out to the spiral nebula. So it's one of these beautiful, almost eternal truths of proportion that I find absolutely fascinating. And again, you can see that this ratio, this proportion, basically is a 1 to 1.618 ratio for a rectangle, but you can see the spiral in the diagram as well as the spiral nebula. Well, I took that idea and then I said, let's apply that to that proportional system to the facade of the Wainwright to see if this is true. And so what appears to very slowly is the golden rectangle superimposed over the facade. And you'll note that even the position of the door frame is determined by this the same spiral. I will repeat this for you so you can take this in one more time. So yes, indeed, it can be said that the Wainwright Tomb with its facades, its cubic form, is based upon the golden section on each facade. And in point of fact, it's 12 feet 4 high by 20 feet wide. It's within a 32nd of an inch of a perfect proportion. It also then makes use of the circle, the dome, and the square in its various forms and patterns. And so if one looks at the form of the building, one can begin to apply these geometric patterns and gain a further appreciation of its composition. This is the back cell, the end elevator noted on the drawing. And again, you can see the simple cubic form of the base of the building, capped off by the limestone dome with wings off to either side on the opposite facade. This is the rather simple and quiet facade. Again, note a different carving on this side as opposed to the others. And this one, a simple rectangle in its form. This is a close-up of that carving with its, again, organic patterns and circular forms. The side elevation and coming in as a close-up, again, thinking about the proportional system as we showed on the front elevation, and as this is an equal facade, you can see the proportional system applied to it, and also it determines the edge of the side windows. And note that the part to the hole and the hole to the part, the wing walls of that entry terrace are also the golden section. So the proportional system is the same, whether it is the entry terrace or the body of the building itself. The hole to the part and the part to the hole. Here's a view of the side elevation with its carvings unique to this facade, and the bronze windows inset, and a detail of the carving of the ornament on the northwest facade with its beautiful tendrils and leaf patterns. The opposite side to the southeast, this is a view of that side elevation, along with its bronze windows and unique carvings for this facade. And one can feel the sense of growth here in its pattern and forms. And a close-up of that same carving, unique to this facade. This is a drawing that is labeled Longitudinal Section, LS, and this was done March 1st of 1892. And this cuts right through the center of the building, up the elevated terrace and into the tomb itself. So this is a view of that terrace as one walks up to the front door. And then the tomb within, capped off by its magnificent mosaic dome. Here we're looking to the southeast to the bronze grille. This is a drawing, a longitudinal section showing the concrete. So this is a structural drawing showing how the building concrete was formed in order to support the limestone facade and dome. This is a transverse section, so this would be cutting through the building at the midpoint and looking towards the end wall. This drawing completed March 2nd of 1892. And in here, you'll note that the dome above with its 5'9" radius and the arch with the recess straight ahead is also that same 5'9" radius. And it's a marble inset panel. And so if you are inside the tomb, this is what appears. So that drawing translates into this interior. And so you see Ellis Wainwright to the left, Charlotte to the right, straight ahead of a blank wall, a blind wall of limestone, flanked by bronze grills and windows to either side. This is a drawing. It's a transverse section looking towards the end. And again, it's a structural drawing showing how the building will be held up by the concrete frame. This drawing is a transverse section, so across the midpoint, but this time looking outward towards the entrance to the tomb. So we're looking at the entry gates. And this is a close-up of that same drawing. Here you see the gates open, looking to the outside. Across the street is the Limestone Mausoleum to the northeast. This is a view of the plan of the floor showing a detail of the mosaic. And in here, you see this magnificent ornamental patterns and then the pattern that the craftsmen installed of these mosaics. And you'll note the drawing, the radius here of 5'4". And there's a note that says same as walls and ceiling. So this is fascinating in that the pattern repeats itself on the floor, on the ceiling, and in the walls itself. So here's a view of that circular pattern as it wraps around the tombs. And that is all below that domed mosaic ceiling. So the floor pattern is identical, the radius to the radius of the dome above. And it is also identical to the arch that you see straight ahead with the marble panels inset. This is a drawing of 1/2 elevation of arches showing mosaic and marble. And again, we zoom in on that very same drawing, and we see that same 5'9" radius here. And so this is one of those arches on one of the walls, and it will be the same dimension as the dome above and the floor pattern below. Same holds true here on the side. You see same as floor note. And so the patterns that are on the wall itself is also repeated in the floor and in the ceiling. And this would prove very beneficial later on during restoration and renovation. So this is a view of that same elevation drawing, the partial quarter circle to the left, upper left, and you can see how each wall, the ceiling, and the floor relate one to the other. This is a 1/4 ceiling plan showing the mosaic and a close-up of that same drawing. And again, you note the radius of the layout and the pattern that is inscribed on the ceiling plan, the same as the floor. This is looking up at one of the corners of the interior of the tomb. And again, this clearly shows the same pattern being repeated in the ceiling and in the walls. And then when one steps back, you can see that same pattern on the floor next to the long bench for sitting and reflecting upon the. One looks up at the ceiling mosaic straight above, and it's fascinating to know how the angels are organized up above there. The rose color angels are in line with each of the major walls of the tomb, and the blue angels in the blue tile are on a 45-degree angle relative to those larger angels. And then in the very center is a radiating line from above. So this is clearly meant to represent heaven and God above, with shining down on the tombs themselves. Another view, perspective view of that mosaic dome. And a close-up of one of the angels. And truly, it's so beautiful to see the detail here, and the face and the highlights and the tones and the twinkle of the eye. It really is a three-dimensional marvel in 2 dimensions. And also note the gold leaf tiles reflecting light as though they are the stars of heaven above. Here are drawings of the bronze doors that secure the tomb, along with the gates that are just outside of the doors itself. And so you'll see the pattern of the circle with the octagon set inside of the circle, and then the geometry broken down further still. This is a photograph of those bronze doors, showing their tremendous beauty and sculptural relief. And a close-up of those same doors. And here you can see the T-shaped handle that opens the right-hand side, along with the key to the Wainwright Tomb to open the first set of leaves in order to open the second half. And that is the gates leading up to those doors are held in place by bronze hinges, which are countersunk in stone. And note the pattern there on those bronze hinges, and then note the key to the tomb. Again, the whole to the part and the part to the whole. Everything is relative and in scale with one element to the next, and it's a total work of art and architecture. A close-up of the elevation of the bronze gates, and you'll note that these gates are open in large measure. And here's a photograph of that same drawing prepared by Sullivan's office. And a close-up of those pair of gates. Now it's interesting to note that this is a drawing that was prepared by Frank Lloyd Wright from a design by Louis Sullivan for gates, as noted in the lower right hand. And it's also noted that this is a tracing by FLW from the design by LHS tracing Getty Tomb bronze grills. So it answers 2 questions. One, Wright had said that he was in the office and working on this design. And this shows that, yes, indeed, he was preparing drawings for the design of the tomb. And it also ties the design of the Wainwright Tomb back to the Getty Tomb. And you can see the beautiful, delicate traceries of those bronze gates at the Getty reflected in the drawing here by Frank Lloyd Wright. However, as realized, you can see the gates that lead up to the Wainwright Tomb are much more reserved, if you will, and powerful in simple geometry. So while Wright may have worked on the design, what was actually built was according to other designs. A view that protect the windows on either side, and a view of that same grill in reality. Beautiful bronze grills with magnificent carvings that surround it, and it's all deeply recessed. No need for stained glass here. The clear glass allows one to view out as well as appreciate these bronze grills. And you can see that pattern here inside. And another view looking towards the southeast, and note the beautiful sunlight and patterns being reflected in the floor of the tomb from that eastern window. Now, it's been said that the Wainwright Tomb, with its 4 different carvings on each side, represents the 4 seasons of life. So I took a look at the orientation of the tomb, and in point of fact, it is oriented 40 to 45 degrees off of true north. So if one would apply true north, south, east, and west, you would see they go from corner to corner of the Wainwright Tomb. I next applied the summer sunrise and sunset and the winter sunrise and sunset. Here in St. Louis, the summer sun rises 30 degrees north of east and sets 30 degrees north of west. And in the wintertime, conversely, it rises 30 degrees south of east and sets 30 degrees south of west. And it's intriguing to note when one thinks back to Charlotte Wainwright's, the inscription on her tomb, say good night, say not good night, but in some brighter clime, bid me good morning. It's intriguing to think of the summer sunrise making its way, should the doors be open, to fall upon her tomb. Now, this was the site that was given to Sullivan, so one could say this is simply a happy coincidence, but I have been told that the tomb is not exactly parallel, if you will, with the road itself, so there was some intentionality to the exact orientation to being rotated 40 to 45 degrees off of true north. Then what about the concept of 4 phases of life, 4 seasons of life? In this photograph, we see all 4 sides in one slide. Number 1, it corresponds to the entry facade. And here you see this amazing ornamental design, organic design that appears to be so full of life, just ready to burgeon and burst forth. That, to me, that means spring, and life is beginning as one approaches the entry facade to the tomb. On either flanking wall, numbers 2 and 3, I feel that east, the image with number 2 associated with it, is summer because of the growth patterns and the energy that's contained within that. It feels almost as though there are tendons inside our bodies that are growing and strengthening. On number 3, you can see again what I consider to be fall and maturing with its life forms and its tendrils. One could possibly reverse those and think of summer and fall being the opposite relative to what I've just described. A good friend of mine, Andrew Ramist, a friend and fellow colleague and architect and historian, suggests just that number 3 might be, in fact, the summer growth. That said, I think the very important 4th facade, the end facade, is one that speaks to death and eternal life. And in that, you'll note that there are patterns that are carved with circles in the limestone. But note that the circles are not tangential, but slightly pulled apart. And in doing that, one thinks of the circle as no beginning, no end. But to further reinforce that, Sullivan ties these 2 circles together with this X, if you will. And then you can see that we have a symbol for infinity. So again, truly no beginning, no end, life goes on eternally. And so then in his own way, he superimposes that same pattern, shifting it one half panel off to create this very, very rich ornamental pattern for the fourth facade. Again, I think of it as winter, I think of it as death, but more importantly, eternal life. Here are views of those corners of the building coming together. The northwest facade tying in with the southwest facade. And it's also interesting to think of that eternal life facade as oriented to the sunset as well. This happens to be the southwest facade to the southeast facade, the junction there at that corner. And here is the northeast facade adjacent to the northwest facade. So the entry is on the left-hand side. Now in 2008, the Wainwright Tomb was restored. And this was undertaken by a group which included a restoration architect, James Henschel, RA, construction by J.E. Novak Construction Company, Aaron Novak, AIA, and restoration work undertaken by Capital Restoration and Painting, which is now JTW, Restoration Services, Inc., Gary Sextro. And in it, these members teamed up to help to restore the Wainwright Tomb to its original condition. As noted in this fall 2006 photograph, you can see that this being an all limestone building, it had a very porous limestone. There was moisture infiltration and biological growth in carbon stains. So this was the task at hand in 2006. And again, the same time period with the same conditions. This is the exterior cleaning in process. So what you see here is a workman on the top power washing the dome with Prosoco BioClean and to remove that biological growth. It was a low pressure spray and nozzle be held upward and distance away from the surface for the proper cleaning. And then once it was cleaned, it was sealed with Prosoco natural stone treatment, which has approximately a 7-year lifespan. This is a view of the side, the southeast side, with the bronze grate and window there. And you'll note that it's cleaner in the center. This is an in-process photograph that shows the cleaning of the staining that resulted from that bronze washing on and embedding itself into the limestone facade. So this is an in-process photo, and I've been told it was a very difficult task to remove that stain from the limestone itself. The limestone also needed to be restored. There was some severe cracking along one of the joints, and here you see the workman applying a limestone repair by John, J-A-H-N. And in this, there are basic colors plus tints of buff, brown, and black. And there was about 10 to 15 samples prepared for selection to find the best match prior to its application. And here to the left, you can see the result of the limestone after it has been patched. Now, the interior posed other difficulties. As we noted, it has a fairly flat roof in the corners, and there was water infiltration, and some of the tiles had in fact fallen to the floor. And you can see some had completely fallen away. There's one area there that has lost its tile, and you can see the water infiltration and biological growth through the center of that pattern. As was noted, the pattern fortunately repeats itself on the floor, the walls, and the ceiling. So there was ample opportunity to take note of those patterns to recreate the pattern on the ceiling. And in doing so, the interior was also restored with simple warm water to bring it back to life as best as one could. And here you see a photograph of craftsman Roger Hallam. In this, he is standing by a series of tracings that he prepared of the tile area and of the missing tile, along with the tile patterns that still existed within the tomb, so that he could apply that same pattern and recreate the tile patterns in the ceiling above. So here are those patterns that have been traced and ready to be applied to the ceiling itself. And here, when they took some of the tile work were cleaning out some of the loose grout under the tile, it did expose some deep cracks in the concrete superstructure, about 3/8 of an inch to a 1/2 inch wide. So epoxy grout had to be prepared and filled the cracks to bond the substrate together. So with this, a skim coat of Arctic white plaster was applied in the area of the missing tiles. So here you can see there was tile that was missing in within this square, and then tile that was missing around the perimeter. So this is an Arctic white plaster. To that then, the patterns were applied, they were transferred from the tracings that you saw earlier to recreate the pattern on top of that Arctic white, and then it was painted with a acrylic paint, the original mosaic color and tile pattern, as they realized they could not begin to find and duplicate the original tiles themselves. So it had to be done through a method of painting. And here you see a close-up of that same tile pattern being restored in progress. So you can see the lighter color here as they're getting the proper hue. And that's another view under the dome ceiling, and this is that same corner right here that we were just looking at. And then looking straight up at that corner, and this is a photograph taken from September 2nd of 2021, you can see how beautifully restored it is. It's holding up very well, and it's a perfect match to the tile patterns that surround it. And there's our angel again looking down from above. So this is how it appeared in 2008 with the limestone cleaned and restored. And a view from as we walk around the building, so to speak, and looking at the southeast side. And it is so beautiful to see in that, you see all those magnificent carvings that adorn each side. And this is the southeast side here with the restored grill and a view of the front elevation and a detail of the front elevation carvings. Now, it's also a wonderful place to visit and to learn about architecture. And this is a photograph that was provided by Aaron Novak upon completion. And it happens to be a group of children coming in. It's the Kid Architecture Camp. And this is a camp that was founded and run by John Davey, who was a professor at SIU Carbondale in the School of Architecture. And he loves to bring the children up here to see these beautiful works of architecture, to explore architecture firsthand, as one should do. As fate would have it, just this very year on May 28th, my wife and I had a chance to visit with John at the Fuller Dome home. This is Buckminster Fuller's dome that has been lovingly restored. And John serves as the Richard Fuller Buckminster Dome not-for-profit president. And he, along with others, have been responsible for the care and restoration of this dome home. So it was great to meet with him and learn more about his activities. But it was a wonderful serendipitous connection of his touring and educating children with his kids' architecture camp here at the Wainwright Tomb. And so this is a view of the tomb, as of today. And one can see that it is beginning to stain again. The good news is that there are efforts underway to begin to plan for cleaning the limestone. That will be undertaken in the very near future. And then a schedule will be established for cleaning so that it is taken care of on a more regular basis in a more timely fashion, so that it is kept into its beautiful condition that you saw from its earlier restoration. Now, another piece of St. Louis history then, in terms of Ellis Wainwright himself, after he left the St. Louis Brewing Association in 1900, He was convicted of bribery and corruption charges from city railways, and in 1902 fled to Paris to live there for several years. Eventually, he did return to St. Louis, and he lived in a place called the Buckingham Hotel, which is on Kings Highway and faces west towards Forest Park. That site is where he passed away on November 6th of 1924 as a recluse. That same site is the site of St. Louis's newest high-rise, the 100 building designed by a studio gang, which is 36 stories in height and 385 feet in height. Now, there are other buildings of St. Louis buildings designed by Louis Sullivan that we would like to share with you tonight. The Union Trust building is just 2 blocks north of the Wainwright building downtown at 705 Olive Street. This is a building that faces south, and these 2 wings frame an exterior light well, if you will, a light court. So it's a U-shaped building. This is how it appears today. These are historical photographs that show the building with its original base, and note the grand arch that leads into the main into the center of the building, and the wonderful circular windows on the mezzanine level, and then the top with beer gardens above with those steel structures. This is a view of the base, and again, note this, the circular window, these lions that are guard corners of the building and flanking the. This was the Union Trust building, and so that was a symbol for protection of your money and your deposits within. It's also very important to note that this occurred at the same time as the design of the Transportation Building, 1891 to 1893, for the World Columbian Exposition in Chicago. And this is the building featured an amazing golden doorway, a very, very powerful arch, which really, quite frankly, flew in the face of the rules and regulations of the city, which were to be all classical and all using white as a predominant color for the architecture. So Sullivan cut a new path with this building and created the golden doorway. But that said, there's a strong relationship with this and the Union Trust building done at the same time. Sadly, we lost that great arch in 1924 when the base was remodeled. And also we lost the circular windows, as you'll see in these 2 comparative photographs. In 1905, the building was expanded a little bit further to the north, and by simply adding a few bays. And that dotted line there represents to the right the addition done by Eames and Young in 1905. Here are views of the working drawings, ink on linen drawings from Eames and Young that dated March 22nd, 1905. And in here you can see the dotted line represents the new construction, 4 bays to the north, and it also is replicating the facade with its arches, its circular windows, and its colonnade and cornice at the top. And in another view, on another level, I found very fascinating that this building appears to be, much more of a large U shape, but in point of fact, it's really 2 towers that are joined by an elevator core. So it's a very modern and dramatic building when you can see it in the form of this floor plan to realize, again, this expression of twin towers with abundant natural light coming in on all sides. I would note that these drawings were discovered through a friend of mine this past summer, and we have successfully donated these to the Missouri Historical Society Library and Research Center recently. So they now have these drawings, original drawings, for further study. A view of the south facade and bay window in the light well with the dramatic cornice flaring out at the top. And a view from the side, and you can see the circular windows are still in place on the alley side of the facade. This is on the west facade. And when one looks up from a top floor looking south, you can see the Wainwright beyond. And it's interesting to see these 2 U-shaped light wells in dialogue with each other across time. Again, it gives you a wonderful opportunity to appreciate Sullivan's ornamental patterns and designs with the cornice, the rich cornice details, and the lion's heads protruding from the spandrels on either side of the colonnade. Another view looking towards the west. This is now Hotel St. Louis. It's been transformed after a $55 million investment and a beautiful hotel. And again, would encourage you to visit this at your earliest convenience. Another building that he designed was the St. Nicholas Hotel, 1893 to 1894. And this was just a few blocks away as well. And here you see the original design for the building, capped off with a very beautiful gable roof and very distinctive bay windows, bringing more light in. And the top floor is further articulated with strong projecting balconies underneath that gable roof form. This is as it appeared when it was originally completed. It was to be altered, though, however, in 1905. I would note in 1905, this was the site for the AIA, American Institute of Architects, National Convention here in St. Louis. This is a view of the Grand Banquet Hall underneath that vaulted roof form that you just saw. And a view of the ladies' restaurant within this building. Everything, again, is interrelated, and every last detail is thought of from the large to the small. And here you see a series of doorknobs. The one on the left, I had the opportunity to actually hold in my hand, very substantial, very beautiful texture and design and pattern. On the exterior, the work in terracotta is realized with a snowflake panel. Again, a very dramatic, beautifully geometric panel. And you can see those in the bay windows here. Now, this happens to be the alteration of 1905, again by the architects Eames and Young. And in it, you can see it's lost its characteristic sloping roof, and it has grown, it has been expanded. The snowflake panels were taken off and reapplied as rectangular frames on the top floor. This is a view of the building, along with a sketch by a friend, Joe Magali, of his sketch series, Lost Buildings of St. Louis, which can allow you to compare the pitched roof of the original with the later revised and altered view in 1905. Now, just to show you how much it was altered, 2 floors were added and 2 bays were added to the west. Here you can see an interesting little shop called Winston's, the House of Fabrics from 1952. And I point this out because it was designed by St. Louis's first modernist architect, Isidore Schenck, AIA, for his client, Irwin Weichman Winston. And there's a really interesting story here architecturally when one connects the dots. But this is a view of Winston's in color up to the upper right. You can see the 1952 shop as designed by Isidore Schenck. Well, the connection here with Irwin Weichman is that he had hired Eric Mendelsohn when he was in Germany in 1922, 1923 to design his fabric store, as well as apartments above. And you can see this very strong horizontal expression along with the cantilevers that was influenced by Frank Lloyd Wright and Eric Mendelsohn's admiration for the Wrightian style of architecture. This was also most likely designed in collaboration with Richard Neutra, another giant of modern architecture all these years earlier. Well, when Mr. Weichman needed to flee Europe with the advent of World War II, he emigrated to the United States to St. Louis. But so his involvement with St. Louis and architecture goes beyond this shop that he had designed for himself in the early 50s. And in that, his architect, Eric Mendelsohn, was invited to give a talk here in St. Louis to the Liberal Forum, which was sponsored by the Young Men's Hebrew Association in March of 1944. And it's thought that Eric Weichman Winston, he changed his name in honor of Winston Churchill, invited Mendelsohn to come speak. And it was just a matter of about 18 months or so. And Eric Mendelsohn was commissioned to design the new B'nai Yamuna synagogue, 1946 to 1950, which you see here. And in this, you can see a beautiful integration of architecture, environment, and religion, in that this clerestory faces west. And this great cantilever, the vertical fins, and the glass clerestory are all scooping up and funneling in the last rays of light, bringing them down and focusing them into the sanctuary space. And it is at the beginning of the High Holy Days, which began at sundown, that this architecture helps to reinforce and celebrate. So a magnificent structure. It's since been repurposed and is now COCA Center of Creative Arts. But we're grateful to Mr. Austin to have invited his architect from so long ago to come to St. Louis. And this happens to be Eric Mendelssohn's very first built work here in the United States. The St. Nicholas Hotel can also, the remnants can also be seen in the Art Institute of Chicago. You can see the snowflake panel here on the wall. Now, also the site of St. Nicholas can be viewed today. It is now an urban park, and I will highlight that area there. That is the site of the original St. Nicholas Hotel. There are a series of unbuilt St. Louis designs of Louis Sullivan that we will look at fairly quickly. Here is the Mercantile Club of 1891, an unbuilt project. And it's interesting and curious to note that it follows the Wainwright building in terms of its massing here. But one can think if form follows function, the club itself must have needed to be powerfully expressed at the very top of this building to set itself out on the St. Louis skyline. Another building, the Portland building of 1892, with a variety of facade, of window openings and expressions of verticality, along with punched windows at the base and arcades, arched openings at the top. The unidentified tall building, Scheme B here from 1892, anticipates the Bayard building in New York City of 1897-98 in terms of its expression. The Trust and Savings building of 1892-93, unbuilt, also anticipates the Guarantee building in Buffalo. So it's interesting to see these precedents, although not realized here in St. Louis. It's interesting to see the idea behind these buildings being realized later. The Chemical National Bank building is, here's two studies of different heights, Scheme A, Scheme B. And you'll note the building to its right is the building, the Union Trust building that we just saw. And the thing that is intriguing about these two options, although unbuilt, it really begins to anticipate the Schlesinger and Mayer, Carson Peary Scott building later on in Chicago, because you can start to see the horizontal Chicago window expressed, and the fact that Sullivan was interested in using white brick for this facade, for this design. Here, an unidentified office building, Scheme A of 1897, again, beautifully vertically proportioned, although the windows themselves are set in individually as punched windows and not tied together in a vertical expression. Sullivan was constantly searching for new ideas, new forms for his tall buildings. Now, the tall building design of Sullivan, we'll touch upon this briefly. Here you can see the evolution of the idea of the Wainwright building, 1890-91, with its vertical expression, with its simple masonry piers and terracotta recessed spandrels, giving that vertical lift. Then that's followed by the Guarantee building in Buffalo, New York, 1894-96. And this can be thought of as the Wainwright building redone in terracotta. So that facade is entirely done in terracotta. And then the Bayard building of 1897-98 in New York is a very true expression of the structural system, in that the major piers do have the main structural frames in line with them. The secondary cylindrical piers are not load-bearing per se, whereas the Wainwright and the Guarantee, every other pier has a steel frame behind it. So the Bayard is actually a more true expression of the vertical married with the structural. Sullivan was constantly looking for ways to introduce natural light and ventilation into his buildings. And here you see a composite of a variety of his high-rise buildings with the light wells associated with it. And so noteworthy, the Wainwright building with its light well to the north, and the Union Trust in the middle with its light well to the south, and different strategies for bringing that light and ventilation in, so that these buildings were very accommodating and rentable and usable, and good for the public health and those occupants that would be within. So also note the Fraternity Temple building of 1891, 36 stories in height, anticipates well in advance the New York zoning requirements for step back, stair stepping the form to bring more light and ventilation and the daylight views down to the ground level. So unfortunately not realized, but a very forward-looking building in its own right. Of course, the ornamental designs of Louis Sullivan have pervaded this presentation throughout this evening. And one should take a look at a system of architectural ornament, a series of drawings and writings prepared by him in the last 2 years of his life, 1922 to 24. And here you can see a series of the plates that he prepared, and how to begin with a simple geometric form, and then how that form evolves as only Sullivan can do. Here you see the manipulation of the organic forms, the leaf forms, and how rich the variations can be in plate number 2. And of important note in the very middle of this, remember the seed germ. So everything begins with that idea, that germ that gives structure to these forms and ornament. This plate number 3 shows the inorganic and the manipulation of pure geometry and plant geometry. And here we see fluent geometry in plate number 4. Values of parallel lines are expressed here in plate 11. In plate 12, this beautiful patterny balls. The geometrical playground and interpenetration. Plate number 19. And Fini, his last plate. Also published and written by Sullivan, but published posthumously, are the kindergarten chats on architecture, education, and democracy. This book was published in 1934 and was edited by his friend and fellow architect Claude Bragdon. But they actually were a series of articles written between 1901 and 1902, and then revised in 1918. This is another book, is in the holdings of the Steadman Architectural Library, and I hope that you have a chance to see this in person at some point. But again, a magnificent publication by Sullivan posthumously, but leaving really wonderful words of wisdom for those young future generation of architects to follow. These are just some of the pages of the introduction, the contents to take in here, published by the Scarab Fraternity. And it's interesting here to see on this writing about spring, and it further reinforces that idea of being very aware of the seasons of life. But in here, he's talking about the hope that is associated with springtime. And it is a time for hope. It is a time to believe. And so we will in springtime. It is our time for willing now begin. So he's challenging young architects to go forward. And this writing by Wordsworth, still glides the stream and shall forever glide. The form remains, the function never dies. So again, insights to his feelings for form and function and the seasons. Now, we are also blessed with a wonderful collection of Sullivan ornaments here in the area. If one travels east to SIU Edwardsville, just across the river, you can take in the beautiful, beautiful collection of Sullivan architectural ornaments. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, these examples here on this slide. But these are a result of the collection of noted architectural photographer Richard Nicol from Chicago who dedicated his life to trying to save Sullivan buildings. And if they were to be demolished, then he went in and tried to salvage some of the beautiful artifacts and ornament of those buildings. This collection of nickel was sold to the collection that nickel gathered of Sullivan architectural ornaments was sold in 1965 to SIUE, Edwardsville. Before his untimely death in 1972, he was in the Chicago Stock Exchange building salvaging pieces when it collapsed upon him. But at any rate, we are most grateful to him and all he did to help to save Sullivan's buildings and his ornamental artifacts. The Schiller Theater that we talked about earlier of 1890 was a magnificent collaboration between Adler and Sullivan for this theater in downtown Chicago. I would note that in terms of ornament, you see the pattern here by the mezzanine level arcade. Some of those terracotta panels have been salvaged and are in the possession of the American Institute of Architects, St. Louis chapter. I would like to thank you at this point for joining us tonight. Thank you so much, Chris Impastato, for all you've done to help to organize the Stedman series and for your kind invitation to present this talk tonight. I also want to thank Dan Fuller, who's an event and volunteer coordinator, Bellefontaine Cemetery and Arboretum. And please check out their website if you want to see when the next tour might occur for the Wainwright or other tours. I also want to thank those involved with the 2008 restoration effort, James Henschel, architect, Aaron Novak, architect, and J.E. Novak Construction Company, and also the restoration work by Capital Restoration and Painting, now JTW Restoration Services, Inc., Gary Sextro. And of course, I'm very, very indebted to all the wonderful scholarship over the years by so many. And as noted, Paul Lupkin, who wrote Building Monument of St. Landscape, along with the writings of David Van Santen, William H. Jordy, Mario Maneri Elia, Crombie Taylor, Jeffrey Plank, and so many more. So I thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's been a real honor to present this inaugural talk for the Stedman series. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John, for a fabulous presentation. If you'd like to learn more about our upcoming programs, schedule a visit to the Stedman Library, or to see the Stedman exhibit at Central Library, please contact me at finearts@slpl.org or visit slpl.org and look for the events section. Thank you all and good night.